This is not about Wii Sports. It's about another sports game made by Nintendo. Nintendo Switch Sports just had a global playtest, and for some reason, Nintendo didn't allow players to post footage of the game. They can take away my capture card, but they can't take away my thoughts. Here are my first impressions of Nintendo Switch Sports.
You are now watching The Beach.
Ever since Switch Sports was announced, I've been very skeptical of the game. I wasn't a fan of the Sportsmates replacing the Miis, and the central location Spacco Square looked uninteresting. But the main criticism I have is that it's launching unfinished. I've been told countless times you can't judge a game until it's out. That is unless you say it looks good. You can't say it looks bad, but you are allowed to say it looks good. E Twitter bus unum. Regardless, I was able to participate in the playtest. Nintendo said you could not share footage of the game, so that's why I'm using footage from Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort, but it did strike me as odd. This didn't apply to any of the other playtests, such as the ones for Splatoon or Mario Tennis Aces. The only one it applied to was the Mario Kart Tour beta test, but that made more sense because it was a closed beta test, where Switch Sports was an open playtest. So this likely means one of two things: Nintendo's rules have become stricter, or they're hiding something, and I assume the latter. So the question is, was that the case? I will always be honest with you, even if my first impressions were wrong. I'm willing to admit that I actually really enjoyed Paper Mario the Origami King, and was wrong about it being Sticker Star 3. 3 sports were playable in the demo, being tennis, chambara, sword fighting, and my personal favorite, bowling. I got to play all of them, and the first one I played was Swordplay, so we'll be taking a look at that first. There were 3 different playstyles to choose from: dual swords, a charged sword, or a single sword. My favorites were the dual swords. They were the most fun to use, and I feel they controlled the best. The gameplay is very similar to how it was in Wii Sports Resort, better even. The motion controls are more precise, and you get feedback with the rumble, making the game even more immersive. From a gameplay perspective, it was fun and worked well. Even if a Nintendo game is bad or mediocre, the general gameplay is usually solid, so I assumed it would also apply to the other sports. Tennis played just how I expected it to. It feels just like it did in Wii Sports. Out of all the sports featured in Wii Sports, tennis is my least favorite. That's not to say it's bad, but it's more basic than other sports, such as golf and bowling. And speaking of, bowling is easily the sport I was most excited to play. It's by far the sport I played the most in Wii Sports. It also seems that it's the most popular sport for most people as well. The thing that made bowling so much fun in Wii Sports is that it's very close to how bowling is played in real life, the main difference being using a Wii remote instead of a heavy ball to play it. In Wii Sports, bowling was more straightforward. It played well, but the sequel Wii Sports Resort made the motion controls more accurate. It would pick up any bad wrist action because of how precise it was. When it comes to the gameplay, bowling in Switch Sports is more similar to the first game. It's not as precise as it was in Resort, or even Wii Sports Club. You also have to hold on to ZR even after you throw the ball. If you've played Wii Sports before, this will throw you off. The mode playable in the Global Playtest was Survival Bowling. It's essentially a Battle Royale mode. Battle Royale games have become very popular over the past few years, and we can thank none other than Pac-Man Battle Royale for starting it in 2011. This mode is a lot of fun to play, and I could easily see myself playing it a lot. Wow. You may initially think that I changed my mind about Switch Sports, considering how I've been mostly positive about what I've played, but there are 2 issues that still do not sit well with me. The omission of Miis have been a heavily discussed issue, mainly because the new characters, the Sportsmates, look unappealing, and I can say confidently that my opinion of the Sportsmates has changed after playing the game. They're worse than I imagined. I don't like the Sportsmates only because they're not Miis. They are poorly designed characters. All of them have a very similar look, and honestly, they look like the characters you'd find in the countless shovelware Wii games. If you were to tell me this was a 2K Wii Sports ripoff, I'd believe you without a doubt. There's nothing wrong with the Miis. I've seen some comments saying Miis are obsolete because it's 2022. But what the heck was Miitopia last year? The poor presentation isn't just limited to the Sportsmates. The game takes place in a central location, being Spacco Square. Wii Sports Resort had Woohoo Island. Not only did it tie everything together, but it's a creative and interesting location. Spacco Square, on the other hand, is anything but. The sports look like they take place in a shopping mall or a convention center. Let's take a look at Swordplay and Resort. This setting makes it even more fun. You have a stadium full of spectators, and if you fall, you get plunged into the ocean. Falling into a pool in Switch Sports is nowhere near as fun to look at. The location also doesn't make much sense, because when I think of sword fighting, I think of a sword fight right in front of a Macy's. The original Wii Sports did not have a central location, but the sports took place in locations that made sense. You had a bowling alley for bowling, a tennis court for tennis, and a stadium for baseball. Why Nintendo decided to remove the already established Mii's in Woohoo Island, only to replace them with poorly designed characters in a boring central location, is beyond me. Another thing that I noticed about the presentation is that the game does not have personality. When you played bowling in Wii Sports, you'd often hear things like nice spare and great throw, but here, everything is oversimplified, and you know very well how I feel about oversimplified design, but I could at least somewhat forgive the presentation if my worst nightmare wasn't present in the game. The game is launching in an unfinished state. You won't be able to play soccer with the included leg strap until the summer, and if you want to play golf, you'll have to wait until the fall to enjoy yourself a round of golf. I assume Nintendo didn't want footage of the game to be shown because of this, but honestly, the foundation for a good game is here. It wasn't buggy or broken, but the fact that it's launching with only 5 sports fully playable is infuriating to say the least. I'll probably sit this one out, just like I did for Mario Golf Super Rush. You'll often see Nintendo's self-employed lawyers on Twitter more concerned about the definition of an unfinished game more than the actual problem. You can call it unfinished, light in content, half-baked, whatever you want to call it, but regardless of what you want to call it, Nintendo is screwing over consumers. I will never forget how ripped off I felt after getting Mario Tennis Aces, and that's why I only buy games that I'm 100% sure are good and complete at launch. So what do you guys think? Did you play the Switch Sports demo? And what do you think of it? Anyways, thanks for watching, and keep calm and da-da on.